Hello and welcome to the US Against Hunger discussion series brought to you by the World Food Programme USA. Today we are focusing on women and hunger, looking at the global challenges when it comes to food insecurity and women and girls. Standing by, we have an amazing panel. You're going to love them. They are experts, they are passionate, they are committed, and also we have you. You see that little box on your screen there for questions? Use it. Put your questions in there for our expert panel, your comments, your suggestions, anything that you need to know, put in that little box. This is going to be a fast moving hour. So if you think it, go ahead and type it. We start our conversation today with the President and CEO of the World Food Programme USA, Baron Seeger.
Thanks, Femi. It's great to see you again today. On behalf of my team at the World Food Program USA, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We're here to talk about women and hunger, but also women and hope. For the past 3 years, coinciding with Women's History Month and International Women's Day, we spend February and March highlighting how gender inequalities affect hunger among women and girls. But we know women are hungrier 12 months a year. They are hungrier for many reasons, from deep-rooted cultural norms to a lack of equal rights in society and the workplace. When this cycle is repeated over generations, women get trapped in disadvantage and poverty. Where food is scarce, women eat least and eat last. Nearly 90 million women and girls around the world are hungry. But there is good news and cause for hope. It is that women are also the solution. Because while women are hungrier, women are also powerful. They hold the key to ending hunger, a problem that is 100% solvable. Here's an amazing fact that explains why we have hope. When a woman earns an income, she invests 90% back into her community. Think about that, 90%. And consider that's compared with somewhere between 40 and 50% that men in similar situations invest. This, even though women earn 23% less for paid work than men. We don't know in every case why this happens, but it presents an enormous opportunity for the World Food Program as it carries out its programs in support of women. We know from research on the populations we work with that female-focused programming pays dividends to the entire community. This support plays out in things like work skills training, nutrition for new mothers during their first 1,000 days, school meals for kids, especially young girls, and the use of prepaid debit cards that give women the dignity of choice when shopping for groceries. So, before our discussion begins, let me ask you a question. Who is a strong woman in your life? A resilient mother, caring friend, mentor, or community leader? A woman who has made you who you are. A woman who has risen above hard times, who has broken barriers to succeed. Think of her today. I'm looking forward to hearing from our panelists. I hope you'll take from this lively discussion and talk about it with your friends at work and at home. And I hope you'll consider deepening your support of the World Food Program USA and organizations like ours who are working on the front lines every single day to shake up this imbalance for women, for girls, and for everyone who deserves the basic right of food. Thank you again for joining us. Let's get ready to dive into these issues and hear from our esteemed panel on their experiences and perspectives.
Baron there framing some of the challenges. Let me now show you the women and some of the girls he was talking about. Take a look. The panel is so fired up and ready to go. We have Korinzi Moyo. Nice to see you. Her Royal Highness Princess Sarah Zeid of Jordan, and also Tyler Florence. One by one, they're going to tell you how amazing they are. Director Korinzi, you start. Introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you so much, Femi. My name is Korinzi Moyo. I'm Director for the Gender Office at World Food Program. And I really, from my bottom of my heart, thank USA, World Food Program USA, for the work they are doing to increase gender equality and to increase food security. It is because of partners like you, WFP got a Nobel Peace Prize. I really thank you so much. And thank you for having me. Back to you, Femi.
That was a record, Korinzi. That was less than 1 minute, and you mentioned the Nobel Peace Prize. Of course you have to mention it. Princess Sarah, tell everybody who you are, what you do. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Sarah Zeid, and I'm sitting here in New York City at the moment. I have been working with the World Food Program for about 3 years now as a special advisor on maternal, child, and newborn health and nutrition. And it is a tremendous honor and privilege to be able to do this work. And I'm very grateful to be on this panel today.
And Tyler Florence, we're talking about food, and what a perfect person to have in a food conversation. Tell everybody who you are, what you do.
Well, Femi, thank you so much for that introduction. And I got to tell you, I am thrilled and honored to be on such a prestigious panel of activists and incredibly intelligent people when it comes to the world of hunger. My name is Tyler Florence. I'm a chef here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a restaurateur. I'm also a television host, and I am a passionate hunger advocate that's been raising money and raising awareness and also boots on the ground for the last 20 years. And we're very excited to kick off our ambassadorship with the World Food Program, and we're very excited to be here today.
So glad you're all here, everybody. So let's start with some basics. If you could give us each an example of where you've seen inequality when it comes to food and hunger and women, what example would you give us? Princess Sarah, you start.
It could be, anywhere and everywhere, sadly. Do I have to stick with one specific example? Earlier with Tyler, we were discussing nutritional food deserts here in the United States. We see food inequality because of the climate crisis. We see food inequality in the agricultural sector, where women do most of the farming, and yet largely do not own the land, have no access to credit, and so on. So, the inequality that exists, whether it be in terms of access or because of gender, is a global issue at every single point at which you look at the various systems that we operate in.
Korinzi, go ahead, because I know that you are on the ground often, your team are on the ground, and you see those stories. Share a story with us.
Yes. So just to build on what Princess Sarah said, just imagine if you are born a girl, you are already in some cultures totally disadvantaged. You are not allowed to go to school. If you do go to school, you may be pulled out when there is a crisis, like now there is a crisis. You may be asked to do the work at the house, and then you may be forced to get married earlier. All these things lead to you having less access to future education, to future employment, and also to grow to assess your opportunity as we move around the world. So we see these examples all over the areas where we operate. So women are so much disadvantaged just because of gender, and we are saying no to that. Over to you. Thank you.
Tyler, I saw you writing notes right at the beginning. When the president and CEO of the World Food Program USA was welcoming us all. What did you write down? What was on your mind?
you're asking, I'm sorry, who was
That's
that
for
question
Tyler.
directed
It
to?
was Tyler. Yeah.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah,
then.
Tyler. Yeah.
So to me, I am thrilled to be here, and I will be doing a lot of listening, and I will be doing a lot of learning. Myself and my team, we've been hard on the ground, raising money and raising awareness, and feeding people in the middle of crisis. Crisis will last like 5 years here in Northern California, and in 3 major areas. In fundraising, we've been working with organizations like Share Our Strength for the last like 20 years, and specifically No Child Left Behind, which is their school food program, which has been an amazing organization for us to work with. Also, Every Mother Counts. We've raised quite a bit of money and awareness with them as well. And it's just such an amazing organization that's dealing with birth rates around the world with women, and I think it's so incredibly important. And then also, food bank organizations. We've been working. I'm on the culinary board of directors with the New York City Food Bank, and have been a veteran board member of the San Francisco Marin Food Bank for the last 10 years. And also, I've done lots of organization with the Nebraska Food Bank, and they've been suffering quite a bit with climate crisis management for the last couple of years with flooding. It's happened there quite a bit as well. And then also boots on the ground with World Central Kitchen. We've been working with them for the last 4 years, specifically here in Northern California, addressing our own climate crisis, and that's wildfires. That's happened every year now. And every year, starting pretty much in 2017, when it really started to tip. We had a massive fire in the Napa Valley area, and then everyone thought that was the fire of the generation until 2018, 2019, and then 2020. 2020 was the first year we had what was called a gigafire that burned over 1 million acres, and that is, those are real people, and fires have. They don't really care what economic class you live in. If your house burns down, all of a sudden you are affected by climate crisis. And so we have been on the ground making sure that people get a hot, warm bowl of food and a cot to sleep in during those emergencies every single year. And so we are definitely embedded with hunger and crisis management, not only here in America, but around the world. And I'm excited to be a part of this whole program and listen and learn and also contribute.
I'm going to go to some of our viewers right now. Thank you, viewers, for taking part in this conversation. A number of you have already mentioned that there's gender inequality, in particular on the African continent. And can the panelists speak about the particular challenges and solutions in African countries? Kawinzi, you start. Let's be specific here. I don't want it to be just a general conversation. Hone, give us an example.
Okay. I'll give you a specific example. I can give you many, but I'll just stick to one, and then you can come back. Let's start with the social norms, which means the roles of women are given and the roles of men are given. So this is really a challenge where men, or say some men, think maybe they don't need to share the unpaid care work. They don't take their children to school, or they don't cook, or they don't associate with what is called women work. So this is there. Now, let's also, when we come to land access, which Princess Sarah mentioned, then women may have a small plot outside, which they can only grow crops which are eaten by the household, and they are not allowed to sell them because men plant what is called cash crops. So these are challenges, what women do and what are allowed to do. Then that limits them. Then World Food Program comes in and says, we'll buy what you call your women crops. We'll buy them, give you money, give you technical assistance, and make it possible for you to sell your crops to the market. So this is not, this happens in areas like Rwanda. We have these programs, areas like Kenya and Ethiopia, and literally where we have changed women's lives. By what? By putting money in their pockets and introducing income earning activities. And then when their husbands see this, they become so proud and they say, yeah, I'm now going to support my my wife in this. So this is a reality. Yes, there are challenges, but we can do something if we are willing and we have the resources. Back to you.
We've got Dr. Marema who is watching now. Hello, Dr. Marema. I couldn't agree more with you, Kawinzi. We need structural societal change across economic, political, and social cultural aspects. It must start in the home with educating boys and girls about equality. Boys should learn to cook. Tyler's right there for us. Clean and do chores. Girls should learn to play sports, go to school, and be leaders in their community. Princess Sarah, let me just bring you back in here, because I'm wondering, there is this inequality issue with when women and girls eat in places around the world, particularly in the developing world. How have you helped to close that gap?
Wait, if I'm going to jump back a little bit to the question that you put to Tyler, and then also tap into some of Kawinzi's frustration. What did I write down when Baron was speaking? I wrote down a big "we know." You know, a lot of the facts and figures we know. The mortality and the morbidity that we talk about, we know. These are not issues that are suddenly happening. The solutions to these things are not unknown to us. And the real question is why are we not doing more about it? Why here in 2021 are we still having conversations like this? And what are we going to do about it? And there's work at the micro level in the household, and then there's the political work that needs to take place about legislation.
Just ask you this though. We know, are you talking about the development world, the development business knows these facts and figures, but maybe the men, the families around the developing world, maybe they don't know. So I'm going to just push back a little bit on that, because if everybody knew, why aren't we doing more?
Well, you must know who owns the land. You must know whether or not your wife, your daughter, your mother-in-law, grandmother has access to credit so that they can purchase more grains. You know who has access to the market and who does not. And certainly sitting down, having conversations with men about why it's not possible for girls to stay in school, you know, again, at every level, an awful lot is known. The question is, can you have access? You can be taught about, you can have all of the knowledge about early and exclusive breastfeeding, which is something that is very beneficial both for mother and, of course, for newborn baby and child up to 6 months. But if you have to be in a field all day, how are you going to practice early and exclusive breastfeeding? How do we go from having the information to actually making sure it's happening?
I want to bring in Paola Green here, Gorena, and Paola says it's great to see how many efforts are being put into action to try to lessen hunger around the world. Tyler, I'm going to bounce that thought off you, because you're here and you're listening, you're learning. I want you to pick up on Paola's idea and just ask Kawinzi something that's going to help your work as you develop your work in terms of how do you feed hungry people, and also how do you do it further afield than the United States. Kawinzi is right here for you. What do you want to ask her?
Okay. So
Tyler,
you're asking me, right? Okay.
Yeah, I'm asking Tyler.
So,
Kawinzi, hold tight. You have to wait for, I know you have all the answers, but you have to wait for Tyler to ask the question before you can give him the answer, right? But I know you have the answer anyway. Tyler, Kawinzi's very kind. She gave you a little bit more time. This is what happens. This is what happens when we put Tyler in a room full of amazing women. He's very rarely stuck for words.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like I said, we're here to be a part of it. We're here to witness, and we're here to be a part of the next step, the next generation hunger fight. Yeah, but I wasn't crystal clear if that question was for me, but I'm happy to answer it if it's possible.
If you're going further afield with your work, you're doing extraordinary work in the US, but you're going to feed hungry people. You're interested in working with the World Food Program USA. You want to know about other situations around the world. What would you ask Kawinzi? What would be useful information for you?
Well, my question is really about logistics, right? Like, because all of my research and the reason we were very excited to start working with the United Nations World Food Program is how they get so much food to so many places. And that is just the absolute fascinating thing about it. Like, to me, the rice grain drops, right? The infrastructure, how they flow from one area to the other. I just think that is absolutely fascinating. And to me, like, I would want to learn more about the last mile. And there's so many fascinating quotes. I mean, because I've had a pleasure doing research on all of our panelists the last couple of days, and there's so many just fantastic quotes. Like Director, one of your strongest points of advocacy is talking about giving women cash, right? And so giving them food is one thing, but then giving them the empowerment to be able to buy things personally, not only for themselves, but also their own daughters that are personal with money, right? And I think those things are critically important. Am I right?
Yeah. Can I talk now, Femi?
Yeah.
Absolutely. The question has been asked.
We know who the boss is in this.
You had the answer.
I mean, it is so important. Tyler, it's so important because now we are talking about food plus. And when you give women cash, they invest in income earning activities. I mean, talk about Becca in Bangladesh, who has been given a loan and a grant. She has started a business. From that, she has sent her children to school. Her children are no longer malnutrition. And she has a bank account. You know that in 72 countries in the world, they don't allow women to open bank accounts. Beck has got her own bank account. And in addition to that, her husband respects her and our community respects her. So, and then can you imagine the indignity of having to ask a male relative to give you money to buy something? When we give them cash, they can make these dignified choices, as your CEO mentioned. So cash empowers women and gives them choices. And we have these programs around the world, supporting more Beckys in Ethiopia, Rwanda, Liberia, Guatemala, and so on. Back to you. Thank you.
I think that's the most important thing, and I think it's the fastest place that we could start. Universal basic income for women with children, right? Because to me, I think if you can separate the idea of men having money and power over women, that's got to stop. Because what they're doing is protecting the next generation of world leaders, and that's how we have to take a look at that, right? So if women aren't put in dire situations where they have to make extreme decisions on buying food or keeping the lights on or paying rent or working 2 jobs and not being there just to provide homework support in the afternoon for children, like, that's got to stop. We should protect the family like we're protecting the next generation of who we are as citizens around the world. And I think that, to me, is one place that I would just love to address a real big inequality issue, and that's just income inequality, right? These are things that we can all address. We can all address right away, and we can all address on our own individual level. Like, I have a company, right? Everyone makes the same amount of money. Like, I have the companies that we work with, like Food Network, they are very critical on the hosts. If you have a male host and a female host, that they make the same amount of money per episode, and I think that's critical, specifically with mothers with small children, because they have to make hard decisions.
So, what I love about this conversation, Kawinzi and Princess Sarah and Tyler, is that we're not just talking about the challenges, we're also talking about how to address those challenges. So, how do we beat hunger? By empowering women. Take a pause and have a look. Panel, you're inspiring a lot of conversation online. We're talking about empowerment now. We talked about the real big challenge. Talking about empowerment, I love this thought from My Heart of Gold. Posted this during our conversation. How do you empower women? How do you fix this situation? By educating women and empowering them with finance skills. Kawinzi, you start. What is the World Food Programme doing to make sure that women like Rafina are thriving and their families are thriving?
So the starting point is that making sure that girls go to school and girls stay in school. And they are not taken out to be married at a young age. We provide school meals to let girls stay at school and complete their education. And that is a start of empowerment, education, and this education gives them a starting. On the other side, we look at what women farmers are doing, and we provide them with the agricultural products, and then we help them reserve their food, reduce waste, and we connect them with the markets. And then we look at young mothers and we give them education about nutrition. And then we also, like in countries like in Egypt and in Lebanon, we also give them skills to start bakeries. And also, can you imagine this? Imagine this, in Lebanon, we are giving young girls, refugee girls, education in skills, tech, IT skills, and then they get a job with internet companies in Silicon Valley. This is one project which is supported by USA program. So this is, we people don't know about WFP. We do a lot, not only food, but we cut across food, technology, and everything. Like Share the Meal, as you know, one of the best applications of reducing hunger. So we are there empowering women and girls in so many ways, wherever they are. Over to you.
That program with the youngsters who end up with skills that are good enough to be in Silicon Valley is really impressive. I'm going to bring in Cindy Allen's question here. Princess Sarah, I'm going to put it to you. Could you talk about the unique challenges that women and girls face in refugee camps? What can or should we be doing to reach them and lift them up? Kawinzi talked about that just there. But Princess Sarah, I believe that you have been in the field, you have visited refugee camps. What's your experience that you want to share with us?
Oh, it's very hard to know where to start with this, I'm afraid, because again, there are so many different issues here. Largely, it's about access to quality education, access to quality services. A family, a woman who is a refugee, largely was displaced in her own country 4 or 5 or 6 times before she became a refugee. So you're arriving as a refugee really with nothing left. And the social fabric that protects women and girls has also disintegrated. And so their protection issues are very much in danger. Their economic resources are depleted, and they are entirely dependent on the goodwill of donor governments and of a host government and it's always the countries that have the least who actually house the most refugees, and so if you look at the Syrian refugee crisis, the bulk of Syrian refugees are in Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan, none of which are countries themselves that are without their problems and have populations that they need to look after. In West Africa, there's currently a funding crisis in East Africa, there's a funding crisis where the food baskets for the refugees have been cut significantly. And I remember just a few years ago when this happened in Rwanda, that caused rioting, because without the ability to feed your family, to put food on the table for your children, you have been left with nothing.
Tyler, I'm thinking about empowerment in the broadest sense of the word. giving people the skills, the abilities to be able to feed themselves if they are in a food insecure situation. The US and North America is very different from the experiences that Princess Sarah is sharing. But there are people in the United States right now who will go to bed hungry. And a lot of the work that you've been doing is to make sure that doesn't happen. Can you tell us about how you do that
Well,
as a chef?
and thank you for that point. Where we stand right now with the pandemic, it has taken a hunger crisis in America and not only made it worse, but also brought it up to light. Like we're seeing, lines for food banks that extend, 2 or 3 miles on a daily basis, where 20 million Americans are now out of work. And that has forced 135 million Americans closer towards food insecurity, where you have to make a hard decision on either are you going to pay your light bill or are you going to buy groceries for the week? Are you going to pay your rent, or are you going to provide meals for your children, right? And so these are really, really hard decisions that families are having to make right now. And a lot of that burden is falling on the shoulders of mothers, and falling victim are children. And so I think it's really important that we address these situations, and it all starts with climate, right? So the climate crisis will affect everybody. It'll affect everybody a lot sooner than we think, right? Climate refugees know no economic boundary, right? If you make a lot of money, if you don't make any money, you're still affected by the cold in Texas, and it will absolutely take out a power grid, right? If you have a lot of money or if you have nothing, you're still affected by Category 5 hurricanes as they blow through South Florida. If you make a lot of money or if you make nothing, you're still affected by wildfires here in California and now in the West, right? So I think for us to address these situations one at a time, and I think fortifying the family unit, starting with the ability to learn how to cook, and that's even if that feels like you're reintroducing yourself to your cookware, right? And how to chop an onion, and how to make a simple sauce, and how to go to a food bank and come back and turn that into meals, not just for one day, but meals for the week. I think education is critical right now when it comes to preserving the family structure. And I think women are in a really great position right now for leadership, and because I think we need it. I think we need calm, cool heads that prevail and make smart decisions on how we can survive as a society. And right now, it's not getting any worse. Hopefully, it's getting better with the pandemic. But it's a situation that I think it needs to be addressed on a lot of different levels. And it always kind of comes back to the family unit and the structure that we have, and that is women also in the workforce, but at home, taking the leadership when it comes to nutritional decisions.
Princess Sarah is writing on her notepad again. She's going to articulate those notes. Go ahead.
Politics. We can each do.
Yeah, questions coming up about politics and governments. Go ahead, Princess Sarah.
Well, but it was just it goes back to the we know, it goes back to what Tyler was saying about the climate crisis. We each of us four, and everybody that is so fantastically sending in their questions, WFP USA, the extraordinary staff that are out in the field, the communities, the mothers, the grandmothers, we can each do our little bit, but it is not enough to tackle these massive challenges that we are confronting now as societies and as the globe. And we have to have really smart, courageous, determined political leadership to tackle climate, to tackle conflict, to tackle contagion. This is our first big pandemic in over 100 years. It's not going to be the last one. And we have more hungry than ever before. We have more refugees, more displaced than ever before. And, the needs are growing, and yet the political determination to really be bold and to make changes is lacking.
Kawinzi, I have
Can I?
designated to be head of tough questions. Kawinzi, you go first, and then I will share with you a question from our viewers. Kawinzi, go ahead.
I just wanted to build on what Princess Sarah said. You see, actually, going around, a lot of people are making political statements. But then they make a political statement and it looks very nice in international setting. But what lacks is that financial support to implement that. We have been talking about gender equality. We have all these wonderful programs all around the world. And there's so much money floating everywhere. If that money can just be taken and matched with this political will, and
Kawinzi, where is it floating? Where is the money? This is COVID-19. We're in a pandemic. Let us know where the money is. Show us the money, Kawinzi. We need it.
We have so many millionaires in the world. Femi, can I just give you 3 facts which are true? Just as the sun rises tomorrow, a woman is going to bed tonight without no food. A woman is going to die without no food. As the sun rises tomorrow, WFP saves lives and changes lives in so many areas around the world. And as sun rises tomorrow, if WFP got resources, financial resources, they would save more lives. Not only will they save lives, but they will take those lives, lift them from famine, and put them to the path of self-reliance if more resources were given. There are so many millionaires around the world. There are so many things around the world. All these resources should be given to WFP to save and change lives. Back to you.
You know what I'm thinking? The idea that any single human being would go to bed hungry is a travesty because there is so much food in the world. I'm not even asking for millionaires. We make enough food, we grow enough food for everybody to have food. And maybe it's like back to Tyler's point, the logistical element of how do we get that to everybody? How do we get people growing their own food, being able to be sustainable in terms of food production? That is the issue. I want you not to escape, though, the tough question, Kawinzi, because I love your idealism that you're bringing to. Yeah, I let you go first, but there's still the tough question. I haven't forgotten it. It's from Phyllis. Phyllis Porter says that organizations like the UN and others need to encourage governments to tackle corruption and conflict because these are drivers of hunger and are more costly to women and girls than they are to men. I mean, that's a statement. It's not even to be debated, but Kawinzi, go ahead.
You know, I absolutely agree because also we have found out countries which are high on corruption are also high on gender inequality. Can you imagine? So it is true, corruption limits women development and limits women actually contributing to economic. And just to go back to a point Tyler said before, if we all went forward creating a just world, really a fair world, where 50% of the population who are women are allowed to have access to resources and everything, our world will be much better and will be better economically. I don't understand why this is not obvious.
And let me bring this thought back in here, and it's something that's coming from our audience, and I know it's something that you've picked up on, but I want you to go a little bit deeper, and that is our audience is talking about education being connected to empowerment. Educate people, then they will be empowered. Educate women and girls, then they will be empowered. Princess Sarah, go ahead.
Just governments can change legislation, and governments can make sure that legislation is then enforced, increasing the legal age of marriage so that 18-year-old girls are not married off before 18. Pregnancy and childbirth are the largest killer of adolescent girls in the world. Legislation that allows a woman to have a bank account. There are so many elements that each of us have to be ready to engage in and push towards. Unless we have a government that enforces 18 as the legal age of marriage and clamps down on harmful practices and women's access to quality education or these sorts of things. How do we keep girls in school?
And Princess Sarah, if you could add to that, because I just love doing research on how long you've been on the forefront of hunger and women's issues around the world. And I think one of the more brilliant phrases that you had sort of pinpointed the whole thing was the difference between the glass ceiling and the sticky floor. Can you just elaborate on that? Too. It was so pinpointed, right? Could you talk about that for a second?
Oh, how wonderful you are! Thank you. So there's a whole lot of global focus on the glass ceiling, that women have to burst through the glass ceiling and the significance of that. My focus, where I think that the majority of the focus should be, and this is why I work with the World Food Programme, because that's where it is on the sticky floor. And as a woman or a girl, there's always something that just keeps pulling you back. And this is the same in sub-Saharan Africa as it is in the United States, as it is in Asia. You could call the pandemic one big sticky floor for women's empowerment, progress, education, employment, and so on. Or it is a woman who works for WFP, and in order to progress in her career as a humanitarian, she needs to be able to move abroad, but she has a husband or children that she can't leave behind. A pregnant woman who is anemic and who bleeds to death because she has never had access to the iron that she needs. There's just always something that keeps pulling you back and preventing you from being able to move forwards in life. And because women and girls are at the heart of all of the other elements that create success, survival, good health, prosperity, whether it be for a family or for a community, if we don't do better for women and girls and enable them to get off that sticky floor, then generations are going to be impacted by this.
Before we wrap up this little chunk of our discussion about empowerment, I want to bring in Alexandra Schmal. Alexandra says there's a critical connection to be made between climate change, women's empowerment, and nutrition. Kawinzi, can you pick up on that thought before we move on, please? Kawinzi, climate crisis and women's empowerment and nutrition. Yeah, absolutely. Our audience are talking about the climate crisis and climate change, and they're saying that impacts women's empowerment in terms of food insecurity. They are seeing that connection. Are you also making that connection?
Absolutely. Because starting point is that if women don't have technical skills to deal when climate change happens or to deal with disasters, then it means that they are not able to produce food, not only for selling, but for their own consumption. But we are so glad now because WFP has introduced insurance for against climate, and some of 50% of the orders of this insurance are women, because we know it is true. Women climate change has got very high impact on what we produce. So there is a lot of connection there. And then it's the women who are left dealing with a very bad land. And again, when we talk about empowerment, WFP will then come in and through food for assets or training, help them create an asset like water facility, or bring back the land to be productive, and then give them the technical ability and input to work with the land. So yes, that's a very good statement. There's very big connection there. Back to you.
And then also, if I can just jump in.
Sure.
So I was in Mozambique in December, and I have never experienced such heat And in the center of the country, meeting with the community, we had driven for, at least 6 hours over bumpy roads to a small community where the women were having to walk 5 kilometers 5 times a day to get access to water. If you have to spend your entire day going further and further to access water because your droughts are becoming more extreme, your heat is becoming more extreme, if you have to spend longer and longer going out to gather firewood and this sort of thing, then you as a woman, you as a girl, when are you going to be going to school? Where are your opportunities when your every day is spent having to spend longer and go further just to gather the basics?
The audience for No Woman Left Behind, this US Against Hunger discussion series, is so engaged today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your excellent comments and questions. I'm going to ask you for one more level of engagement, and that is to look out for the survey. It is available right now, and complete the survey so that we can make sure that this US Against Hunger discussion series gets better and better and better. I don't know how we can improve on today, but you may well be able to suggest an improvement. I'm not so sure. This is an all-star panel. Before we get to the final call to action, I want you to meet some other people who you may well recognize who are solidly supporting the World Food Programme. Have a look.
When emergencies strike, vulnerable people suffer the most. And in most of the world, when resources get tighter, women and girls get less. Of the 690 million people around the world who face food insecurity, 60% are women and girls. And yet, those same women and girls are resilient and lift up those around them. Because when you help feed and help empower a woman, you save an entire family and you transform a community. The United Nations World Food Programme knows that gender equality is a requirement to end hunger. And that's why it's embedded in everything they do. Please join me in supporting the Women Are Hungrier campaign and their efforts to create a more equitable future for all women and all girls.
Mothers and children are disproportionately affected by hunger each and every day. They eat last and least in many places. We can't end hunger until we end gender inequality by empowering women. Please join me in supporting the work of the World Food Programme and lift women, children, and communities up together.
After more than a year of the COVID-19 pandemic raging globally, it is more important than ever to unite and support those who need us the most. In the areas the United Nations World Food Programme serves, the areas most deeply and significantly impacted by hunger, people are living on less than $2 a day. Of those people, more than half which are women and girls, WFP is not only their safety net, but their only means of food. Let's empower women and communities together and take a step forward in unison against hunger and for gender equality. Thank you.
So I know what you're thinking now. You spent 15 minutes with this superb panel. You've learned a lot of information, or it's been reconfirmed for you. You already knew it, as Princess Sarah says. So now what are we going to do? And I want to start this call to action section with Tyler, because one of the commenters watching us having this conversation says, what does global hunger have to do with us if we're in America? What's the point? Why should we care? Tyler, take that on.
Well,
why should Americans care?
You're 5 minutes away from being forced into a situation that you never thought you'd be in, right? And that's the world we live in right now. Like, you never know, right? We're between, the cold snap that just completely disabled the Midwest and Texas specifically. It put millions and millions of people out of power for weeks at a time. And we're all, like 7 meals away from complete anarchy, right? I mean, think about it. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and breakfast by the third day. You're in a pretty dire situation trying to figure out where you're going to get your next meal from. So I think between the pandemic and the hunger crisis that's starting to kind of mix together and mingle, like we have a problem that we need to solve. And I think there's a lot of ways to do that, right? I think first and foremost, I think pay attention to your local food bank, right? Your local food bank will be your life source if you have to get food into the future, and it also supports the community at large, right? We've been involved with the New York City Food Bank and the San Francisco and Marin Food Bank for 20 years now, and it has produced millions and millions of meals for our toughest, most hard-hit neighbors. And to me, I know that I can go to sleep at night knowing that our community is taken care of, right? And so this is post-traumatic stress disorder on a poverty level, right? This will turn into generational poverty unless we can do something about it. The pandemic, the way it exists right now, the effects of that will last 10 years, and we know that. So I think it's really important that we address these situations today. I think we bring up really important topics like universal basic income for women. I think that is how we address a lot of these crises that happen on a micro level. If we say that being a mother is the hardest job in the world, we should pay them to do that. And let me tell you why, because they're protecting the next generation of world leaders. And we need our children to be safe, sound, happy, educated, and fed if we want to get out of this. If not, it's a race to the bottom. And I think a race to the top is where we should really focus our efforts.
This is a call to action, Princess Sarah. I took the liberty of just checking you out on Twitter. Your Twitter profile describes you as determined that mother and newborn survive and thrive everywhere. How do you make that happen? What is your call to action today?
I think that as individuals and as groups, we have to keep challenging ourselves to do more and to do better, and to ask the questions, to genuinely ask, why should Americans why should we care about global hunger and nutrition and these sorts of things? And we have to challenge ourselves to open ourselves up to being wrong, to expanding our knowledge base, and appreciating that it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, that a mother wants the same thing regardless of, again, where she is or who she is. A mother wants her children to be healthy, protected, educated, and well nourished so that they can survive and thrive. And we have to hold on to that, and challenge ourselves to make sure it actually happens everywhere.
I love that. That's a perfect way to go back to Kawinzi, because your mum was so determined that you had a great education. She was so determined that you thrived, even though she wasn't able to get higher education and schooling. And now people, when you grow up, they're like, yes, we can be like Director Kawinzi. That is important. Now you are this incredible role model for little kids in East Africa. Like, you're amazing. How do we get there? What is your call to action? Should we be calling up the millionaires and the billionaires right now? Because there's money everywhere. What should we be doing?
Actually, my experience is a witness that lives can change. I support my children. I support my community. And I came from a rural village where I went to school without shoes. What am I saying? There are so many crises around the world. And we have discovered that food is a pathway to peace. By giving food and other items, we can put people into peace pathway. So I'm asking, WFP does such a good job. Why are we not helping WFP do more, better, save more people, and change more lives? And that's why I'm saying, call out to millionaires to contribute to our food program so they can change the lives of women like me and then support communities. Back to you.
I love the Princess Sarah describes herself as somebody who gravitates towards doom and gloom. I think she's just very practical. And she said, we know when Baron Seeger the present CEO of World Food Program USA, was setting the scene for why there are inequities and food insecurity, particularly impacting women and girls. So if we know, Princess Sarah, what do we do with that knowledge? Why is it that we're not being poked more? I'm wondering if COVID is poking us a lot more than it was, say, 2 years ago, right? It's changed the way we think as a global community because we're all impacted by the same challenges. Go ahead.
I hope you're right. I really hope that that as a mother sitting in New York City whose children have been online, whose access to activities, opportunities have been curtailed, you worry about their health and so on, that this makes someone like me think more about the concerns of mothers everywhere who worry about their daughters and sons who are not able to get a proper quality education. But and this is something that I heard again many years ago, that if you think with your head or your heart or your wallet, investing in women and girls, and I would add nutrition to that, makes perfect sense. There's no way this does not make sense. And we have to speak to people's head, heart, and wallet so that they actually follow through and they make the investments and they ensure that women, girls, and nutrition are the keystone to all other interventions that get made at the individual level in our households, communities, and globally.
Tyler, I'm going to give you one line here, and it's only because there's some confusion online, people watching, why they should care about hunger outside of their own countries, not just America, but just global hunger, when they've got their own issues to deal with. And I'm just wondering, what was it that made you not just an entrepreneur, not just a chef, not just a dad, but somebody who was a philanthropist as well? What's that extra bit that they're missing, that they're not seeing?
I think we're all in this together. I think if you look at it from a humanitarian standpoint, like, we're all human beings, and this pandemic has really brought to light that global hunger is real, and it's in front of every single one of us. On a business level, I think rising people out of poverty creates more economic opportunity for everyone, right? When people have more money to make more decisions with, they're an active part of the economic community. And so I think it's a win-win for everybody just to be involved.
Wonderful. Coenzi, I have one sentence, and it's going to be a fantastic sentence, and you are going to have it to wrap us up and send people away. You've already been inspiring. They're already, yes, Coenzi's talking great sense. Last line, what would you tell our viewers? Go ahead.
I'll say, please get into the fight to increase gender equality, because that's the solution to all our problems. That's what I'll say. Fight for gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. I'm in love with all of you. It's like having a billing for a movie and everybody is a star. I appreciate you also starring. Viewers, thank you. Fantastic questions. I really enjoyed the back and forth with you. WFP USA.org. More information. You can really see some of the extraordinary programs the World Food Program are running right now. Thank you for being part of this US Against Hunger discussion series. The next one, I know it's very timely, it's perfect. It is called Climate Stars. I know you want to talk about the climate crisis, and we are going to help you do that. And that will be on April the 21st, 12p to 1p Eastern Time. I will see you then. Thank you, panel. You're superb. Thank you, audience. You are fantastic. Thank you for watching.